Well, hello, folks. I'm doing one of these goofy body camera videos. I think on the way back I'm going to pick some of those lemons. Man, are they lemons or oranges? Oh, oranges. Have to wait. Our lemon tree is bearing fruit and picking, every day. Have some fresh lemon in my tea. Squeeze a lemon. It's really good. I like to make fresh ginger tea with, some kind of black tea, English breakfast or something like that, and a squeezed lemon. Very good stuff. So yeah, this is gonna look a little weird, I guess, this kind of body cam thing. So I'm listening to Fossil Capital.
It facilitated the production of surplus wealth. More specifically, in the introduction to his treatise, Fari juxtaposed water and steam as sources of power. He did not hint at any absolute scarcity of the former. The advantage of steam lay not in being uniquely plentiful, nor in commanding a lower price. Nothing of the sort figured in his appraisal. Instead, Fari argued, steam is often preferred because a manufactory by steam power may be established in any convenient situation, whereas water power can only be obtained in particular situations, which are frequently unfavorable in other respects.
Yeah, so it's an interesting book. It's about coal and fossil fuel, and so far he's talking about the 19th century and global trade back then. You bring in raw materials like cotton, wool, and then you manufacture garments. And they used water power, so you'd put a big wheel in a river somewhere and the wheel would turn and that would run the machinery. So you'd have a little village for your workers because you relied on the movement of the river to supply the energy. And later, they started using coal, not because it was cheaper or better or anything, but basically because you could move the factory to the city where there was more labor. And you could, anyway, it's an interesting story, and I'm having fun with it. I think I'm 5 chapters in or something like that. So, the other thing I wanted to mention was how painful it is to turn on the television and hear government fools, clowns, reading the script. It doesn't matter if they're British or Australian or American or Canadian or whatever. The Anglosphere, the first world nations, this whole Gaza war, they've memorized the slides, the talking points, and in order to stay in the club, to maintain their membership as, quote unquote leaders in the club of the great game, they can't deviate from that script. And those who do, if you say any kind words about Palestinians or suggest that it's kind of overkill over there with 4,000 children dead, they'll just come back and say, well, that data came from Hamas and can't be trusted. Well, you can believe your lying eyes if you look at the photos and the videos of these neighborhoods that were completely destroyed. I'm sick of it. Human shields, beheaded babies, all this stuff. Because if you waited a few weeks after the October 7 event, information starts coming in from eyewitnesses, journalists, people who are doing research, who are gathering data and evidence, video evidence and testimonies and physical evidence about what happened that day and what happened every day since then until now. And bit by bit the information comes in. And a year from now, depending on how long this particular chapter of the war in Israel lasts, because it's an ongoing conflict that's not going to end after this chapter, books will be written, articles, exposés, people in the UN and other global institutions will weigh in, and it'll all be there, verifiable lines of good evidence about what actually happened, good professional analysis, and so on. And by then we will have forgotten the Gaza war because there'll be something else going on. Uncle Sam will have recruited Australians and South Koreans and Taiwanese people to die in a war with China. No, that won't happen because everything that America consumes is made in China, and all the services that China consumes are made in America. So that's all just smoke and mirrors to keep the plebs and proles servicing the game through their consumerism, dutifully borrowing money and buying things. So when this chapter of the war is finished, people will soon move on to whatever the next thing is. You know, nobody talks about Ukraine anymore. Zelensky's going crazy because he can't get all the things and all the money he wants. It's being diverted to the Middle East. Shock. You know, it's the same old Groundhog Day. Nothing's really new, or everything old is new again, or whatever. And, you know, people have made these mashups videos where they go across the United States, the UK, and Australia, and they show that every news outlet across the country are reading from the same script, and across the world, and everybody goes, ha, see, it's all propaganda. I mean, these are entertainers, actors, presenters who read the news, and if you want serious journalism, you have to follow serious journalists. And many of the good journalists that have existed in the past, I like Chris Hedges, maybe you don't. I like Patrick Lawrence, maybe you don't. But there's so many more, have all been booted out of the mainstream because, in general, they said naughty things about wars in the past, about Sarajevo, about Gaza in the past, about the Iraq war, Afghanistan war. And they just repeat these things. You know, I heard a guy that's supposed to be smart yesterday start talking, and he is smart, and most of the things he says I think are very accurate and well-meaning. But then as he was flitting from one geopolitical subject to another, which isn't his real area of expertise, he started talking about how Afghans brought down the Twin Towers. So, you know, it's like right before he said that, he was saying sources are illogical and they don't know what they're talking about and they lack depth of knowledge in areas that they comment on. And then he went on to comment on something he doesn't know anything about, obviously, which is fine. I mean, we all do that. And Richard Carrier, you know, he's a historian and a literary critic who studies the Old Testament and the New Testament and things like that. And he uses Bayesian probability and searches for evidence under the the normal ways that historians would consider decent evidence, and also, well, what are all the domains, the linguistic aspects of it and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, people like that, they know when they're deviating from their area of expertise, and they make lots of disclaimers, and they're careful to admit that they don't know when they don't know, and that they're just speculating. And they mention their sources, they tell you where they got their information, and then they share their opinion, and you say, okay, I'll have to look into that more deeply if I'm interested in it. And I find that honest, and I appreciate it from people like that. But people all over the place, you might be really into soil biology, permaculture, other movements to create a sustainable culture, blah, blah, blah. All these ideas. But it doesn't make you an expert in everything. And we have to acknowledge that we need each other, because some people spend decades learning in one field. And we can't know everything. It's impossible. So look at that view. So we need to, it's kind of an interesting little forested spot. I was talking to a guy about cedar trees in Portugal the other day, a local guy. They're trying to put more, indigenous forests back. Anyway. Yeah, so you turn on the TV and there's always another clown reading from the script, and they say exactly the same thing. And they haven't updated their information at all or looked at any of the new evidence that comes out. They keep talking as if it was October 8th. And they obviously don't care. They have a script, and to keep their job, to keep their career, to keep their position, they're forced to just stick to the script. Are they lying? Some of them are. Do they know they're deceiving people? Some of them do. And some of them don't, and they don't care. This is what we have to say. And so they say it over and over again. And anyone who doesn't, who's updated their prior beliefs about an event and starts to speak of things in a more nuanced way, where the complexities of the situation can inform one's perspective, understanding different, angles to a story about an event or an event unfolding. These people are just booted, censored, abused. And it happens over and over again. In my life, Vietnam, and everything after Vietnam, over and over and over again. And I've read enough about the period of my lifetime to have followed up on these events and learned from the research and the decent reporting and authorship of writers and so on. to know where the deceptions were, you know. If people would just slow down and say, this is ugly and nasty, it's going to take a while to figure out what actually happened and why it happened and so on. But when Uncle Sam tells the world to jump into his narrative about things, we just say, how fast? How well can we cop the narrative? Give me the script, I'm going to read it. We get all excited, self-righteous, judgmental, and we think, yeah, I'm outraged. And we just swallow the narrative without even thinking. And of course, if we are bigots and hateful people, narrow-minded, small-minded, willfully ignorant, stubbornly foolish, then of course we're going to enjoy the outrage and parroting the mainstream propaganda. And most people say, what are you on about? It's not propaganda. I read it in the Washington Post, New York Times. Well, even in those outlets, every once in a while there's a slightly dissenting view, or journalism that reports accurately about something that happened. But more often than not, it's just a mouthpiece for the great game, which is global financialized neoliberal capitalism, which is an homicidal heat engine that will destroy civilization and has the potential, there is a probability that it leads to our extinction. Because if we keep killing everything in our biosphere, we're going to lose our habitat. We're going to lose the ability to feed ourselves. We occupy all niches on the earth. You know, you have these beautiful reindeer herders in the north of Finland and so on. And they know how to live when it's 30 below zero or 30 above. And they have their resources. They have their reindeer and their environment, and they've learned over centuries, thousands of years, how to live. But at some point, if we wreck things too much, we won't have any reindeer. We won't have a niche. So we have accelerationism and singularity and all this tech stuff that is going to save us. The robots will do everything. AI will figure it all out for us because we're so stupid. Oh man, it just kills me. So, yeah, it gets extremely tiring. But you know, what do? You turn it off, you turn away, you shut down, you become apathetic. Nothing I can do. And you basically give up on humanity. Or if you're really lucky, you just don't understand anything I'm saying and you think it's all kind of silly and you worry about me and so on and so forth. Like, what are you so worried about? Why don't you go read some Steven Pinker books about the Enlightenment and all of that? And remember how wonderful the world is. It is wonderful. I love life. But what we've developed with our modernism and technology and all that is an omnicidal heat engine. And at some point, a critical mass of people around the world have to acknowledge that, understand what that is, why it came about, what's happening, and do something to change things. And of course, peace is number one. We can't invest money all the time in these stupid wars. Cheap. You know, we should invest our time, energy, capital, all kinds of capital, intellectual capital, human capital, natural capital. We should take our resources, our copper and whatever else we need for our smartphones, rare earths and whatnot, and develop things that are good for people and good for animals and good for plants, good for the biosphere, so that we can, well, wouldn't you rather live in peace? Hello, buddy. And I was reading about how recruitment, they can't recruit soldiers in the States because people just don't want to go and die in Afghanistan or Iraq anymore, and they don't even want to go and kill Iraqis anymore. Of course, something could happen. You know, a small terrorist group in some little country in Mali or somewhere could blow up some people in Denver, and then we'd have to go shock and awe the fuck out of them and kill everybody, all the Berbers wandering around with their goats, you know, bomb all the terrorists. And while you're at it, any Russian mercenaries or whatever, get your special forces in there. And then maybe some people would sign up right away because they still believe in this fantasy of America. And obviously it's great. So I was teasing my my friends who are conspiracy theorists about vaccines and masks and all things that take our freedom. And whenever they send me some big long article about Bill Gates and how much money pharmaceutical companies make and depopulation and defragmentation and all that kind of stuff, I always get back to them kind of with kind of ironic humor. And I'm saying, I know, man, I was when I went out today to buy my blood pressure pills and my statins, my diabetes medicine, after I had my pizza delivered by an Amazon drone, and then I went to the pub to drink beer and watch NFL games that are not real NFL games. They're fake NFL games because we know all the NFL players died because of the vaccine. Now that was a joke, so please, YouTube, that's ironic humor. I don't mean that. Vaccines are good. I'm just saying I'm getting back at them with this kind of humor because I think their conspiracy is silly and I think it's misplaced. Because the real problem is the logic of the system's logic, the way things run, which we know as globalized, neoliberal, capitalism. I mean, yeah, you can have markets and trade and stuff and make it sustainable, make it just, make it fair. It could happen. But we stay in a system where they keep funneling the money to the top, to the players. And of course they love this system because it works really well for them. And we're all geniuses, right? And for some reason since 1947 and before that, because you can read about the trials and tribulations of Lebanon before the British took control. I mean, it's a rough world, Ottoman Empire and all that. But we haven't been able to solve it. There's still these horrible wars. Children are getting bombed and killed. Innocent people are dying as I speak. And this year was the hottest year on record, and next year is going to be hotter than that. And we're not doing anything to slow things down. Not a damn thing. It's all flim-flam, greenwashing, because you can't do anything unless it's profitable. So, you know, the wind farms and blah, blah, blah. And then you have to go get resources from Africa and other countries to make the first world go around. So more exploitation. Call it what you will. You don't have to call it neo-colonialism or anything. But you have to say, I got to control those resources so my company can make money. And so that my people in France and America and Canada can buy stuff, borrow money and buy stuff. We're not going to stop that model because it works. It's profitable. And the lower grade functionaries, the clerks that take care of the big players and the petty players, they all do pretty well. They're not living in Mali or Libya. They do pretty well, so why would they want to change anything? It's ridiculous. It's stupid. Why? Why change a goddamn thing? Yep. Yeah, I've taken it down here before to the football pitch. Nice little place. So that's where we're at. Like it or like it. So, yeah, that's what we're up against, a torrent of lies. 24/7. And I don't know how many times I've talked about this over the years. Not that anyone's listening. But I don't pull this stuff out of my ass or out of the ether. I'm learning things. And so I get these ideas, thoughts, and feelings. And I don't stop learning. We all like to say, when I'm wrong, I'll admit it. I'll fess up. Because we all think we're that good. We're all so damn smart. But it's not true. We all make mistakes. We all get taken in. We all get conned. Yeah, so that's one of my pet peeves. It's like all of us just, we say we're logical and we're critical thinkers and we're smart and well-read. And then we go on to make all manner of mistakes in our thinking and our presentation. Oh yeah, there's all kinds of clever words for it. But basically it's just that we're just overconfident people. And we need to believe that we're switched on, that we're correct. We desperately want to believe that. Well, so we're just going to basically, things are just going to happen. And like I said in my blog post today, circumstances will dictate what happens in the future and we'll adapt to it. Because we don't have the wherewithal to get ahead of it. To ask 30,000 or 30% of the Americans in the United States to leave the cities and go work in the countryside building soil, and ask all the suburban households to plant gardens instead of yards, and to manage our water resources and our resources better, and to give up some things. We're not going to give up anything. You're an idiot if you think people are going to give something up. Once you have something, you're not going to give it up. It's over your dead body you give it up. You're not going to give up your car, your air conditioner, your 5 big flat screen LED TVs, or whatever the heck it is that you have. And the people who can control the amount of CPUs needed to train large language models, these are a few companies in the world, not even nation states, a few companies. or private-public partnerships like you have in the United States with various agencies. They're going to tell us what to think. You can't afford it. Or if you can, let's say they charge $100 a month so you can train some language model and do some programming. You're a little terrorist group, and you say, well, that's worth it because I can do bad things. They say, don't worry about that. We're going to have quantum computing, and we're going to have rock-solid, airtight cybersecurity. People will hack it, but even if they don't, this new God that we start to worship, this oracle, is not going to be in it for us. It's in it for those big, huge companies that can afford all those ASIC boards that they need to run their language model. Who's wise enough to train AI to be good for us? We work for Facebook. You go on your Instagram and they tell you have to give them your data. Otherwise, you got to pay. So one way or another, you're making them money, period. That's what you do. You borrow money and you buy things, goods and services. I don't know if we're living life. I don't know if anybody in this world will talk to me, will appreciate a friend like me, because I think about these things and it's no fun. I should be telling war stories about my childhood and my youth and companies I've worked for and run. Or telling people how I take care of 5 kids. I don't have 5 kids. I have 6 cats. But anyway, these kinds of things people love. So we're going to just hang around, and when the time comes and we have to give up something, we'll give it up and we'll deal with it then. And if that kills billions of people and wipes out thousands and thousands of species of life on this fragile planet, then that's what we're going to do. Because we won't give up a damn thing. Bouillanti. So, let's talk about something more interesting, shall we? So the weather lately. In my experience, it's unusual, and I think most of my Portuguese friends believe that too. Look at these cool, you always leave some grapes on the vine if you're going to grow grapes. So look at these beauties. Isn't that something? I love grapevines. Oh my goodness. Thank God Uncle Sam doesn't like them. If the world was all about olive oil being the commodity, we'd be in trouble here. This place would be bombed incessantly until they had control of the spice, the olive oil. So, the weather. It rained a month and a half every day. There were some storms. Nazaré is getting monster waves. It's going to be a really big season, I think, this year. And El Nino, the ocean's heating up like crazy. And that's going to push us across some tipping points because the ice is melting fast. And AMOC and whatnot. So, usually these are cycles, but because of the blanket of CO2 we put in the atmosphere and change the chemistry of our atmosphere, it's just going to absorb more heat. And the global masking effect, if we stop shipping goods all around the world, we're going to heat up even faster because we're not putting enough sulfur dioxide or whatever it is into the atmosphere that reflects some heat back out into space. And of course, IKEA is having a hard time because they can't sell their stuff in Germany or Austria because people are just not spending money. They're saving up or buying stuff for their garden or to save water or off-grid electricity systems, batteries and solar panels, and putting raised beds in their backyard because the economy is messed up because of what happened with this war that arguably was started by Uncle Sam's machinations to control the world and decouple Germany and Russia. Anyway, whatever, you don't think so because you watch the people who read the script. I get it. I'm an idiot. Anyway, so IKEA, or IKEA, however you say it, has to lower prices like crazy to get rid of inventory. And still people aren't buying. They're waiting for the lowest possible price. This puts pressure on the company, has to lay off people, can't buy as many goods to sell from their manufacturers. Of course, this affects China in a big way because a lot of their stuff is made in China. So it has ripple effects throughout the global economy. People lose jobs. People have even less money to spend. In Japan, they want to give poor people money to spend so that they can buy stuff and keep the economy going. So this is a dying thing we're trying to keep alive. It's a monster, egregore, whatever you want to call it. And we're trying to keep it alive to the last minute so that people who benefit from the system can enjoy the good life, which is nice. But at the end of the day, it falls apart because we just won't be able to buy as much stuff. So it rains for a month and a half incessantly. Today it's going to be 22, 23 degrees in November. Usually it hovers around 18, which is still really nice, 18°C. But 22, 23, 24, that's a lot warmer than usual. So a lot of these gardens and stuff, they're budding again. The trees and the flowers, they just don't know what time of year it is. So things are shifting and the farmers are going to adapt to it. At some point, we'll go back to the way things were when I was a kid. In Ireland, I spent time there. My relatives had, my uncle, he managed the Dromoland Hotel. He ran the post office in Newmarket-on-Fergus. They had a hair salon there that Rita, his wife, ran, and Maria and Colette worked at. So everybody had multiple things going on. They had a garden, they had an orchard, apples, pears, stuff like that, gooseberry bushes, potato patch, onions, leeks, staples. And then you'd walk down to the butcher and you'd get your meat when you needed it, so it was always fresh. You just walked down the butcher and got it. If they didn't have something, you got something else. You went to the baker for bread. The creamer would deliver the milk. and the cream to your doorstep, horse and cart. People did a lot of things. They farmed. Of course, now we have big high-tech, Cisco systems, and I don't know if they're there, but high-tech companies. Apple was there, providing, good jobs for educated Irish people with skills. But these jobs are going to go away. And we're going to be back in the village like this village here in Portugal, doing lots of things to stay alive, and we'll have lots of relationships. The baker will know our name. In the old days in the States even, they had these markets once a week. The farmers would take their surplus produce and sell them to each other, and they'd make a little bit extra money from other people who came into the market, and then they would go and buy something they needed, a shovel or a jacket or a sweater or whatever, a pair of boots, have a drink with their friends maybe, go to a dance, watch a movie, and then they'd go home and work all week and do the same thing again. I don't think that's too bad a life. And if you had a bunch of young people living out here in the countryside where I live, doing a bunch of different things, they could be programming, doing their gig jobs, but also building soil and other things. And there would be kids running around and people, and it might not be so bad a way to live. What I fear is that instead of proactively building that life back again, building that life back better, we just go pedal to the metal until we stress out our environment so much and wreck our economy so much that billions of people die. And then, of course, you're going to have to live smaller lives. You won't have a choice. So while many people advocate getting ahead of this and kind of engineering the future in a certain sense, a lot of people just don't care. So it's not going to happen. You have all your influencers and people with good ideas on the internet, on the YouTubes, and they'll be great, offering wonderful insights and ideas, but it won't catch on. There's some lady that used to vlog about makeup. She was really beautiful and young. My wife was telling me about her back in the day, a decade or so ago, or maybe less. She got married and had 5 kids, got really, really big and fat. She has no time, which is fine. That's her choice. She wants kids. She's got kids. I'm not saying that's bad. And so she restarted her YouTube again. She has all kinds of awards. She has millions and millions, tens of millions of followers. And she talks about where to get the kids cheap underwear and how to keep your kids healthy and how to cook for 5 kids. And, it's just that stuff. So I suppose a lot of trad ladies love that. Good advice. And then probably lots of other people who are just juggling a lot of things because of modernity. And it's really popular. That's it. And probably, because the CPUs and all these ASIC boards are going to be, and these, engineered boards for AI are going to be, and Bitcoin and whatever, you're going to be taking all the power. You got to have more fossil fuel. You got to burn methane to harness the energy to put into the miners so you can mine Bitcoin or run the large language model. All of it requires fossil fuels. So you're not going to get rid of that anytime soon. And so nice and green, isn't it? I love that. So, cornfield, in the fall. Yeah, so energy intensive, right? Gotta have all of this energy to run all of this new cool tech stuff. And it just leads to more disjointedness, culturally, alienation, and more global heating, and so on and so forth. None of these things are going to save us. People have to think about what's important and decide how they want to live. And most of us, we only know one way to live. Like I said in my blog post, you know, the day we're conceived in the mother's womb, a lot depends on our prenatal and our natal condition in terms of how we develop, and our childhood, our diet, our mother's diet, her mother's diet. These factors of nature, nurture are important, and there's lots of good research and writing and peer-reviewed papers and Sapolsky books and whatever you can read to learn about that. But if you're fortunate and you were born in Denver and grew up in a middle class or a slightly upper middle class situation, you're very fortunate, and you get a university degree, and right off the bat you get to be a clerk in the great game. You have a position, a job, jobs. Not just, menial work, but some kind of job, almost even possibly professional. And you get to borrow money and buy things, and your status goes up, and you get respect and, all kinds of great social benefits. And then you have kids. Now you're more wealthy, and you pass on a better opportunity to your kids, who get to go to Harvard or Yale or Princeton or Brown or, one of these Ivy League schools somewhere, Cambridge, Oxford, INSEAD, McGill, and you get an even better education. And now, if you're not a professional, a suit, a lawyer coding capital, or a doctor, or something like that, you graduate to being a player. You get your law degree and you're a player. Hedge funds, derivative products, you get to buy real estate, you get to own shit, control resources, human resources, physical resources, stuff, vast amounts, armies. You can tell the government what to do. You can create law that makes corporations persons, develop certain kinds of limited liability companies and markets, bourses, and you can control capital. Big time, not just rent out a place or, hire some people for your restaurant chain. Public companies, you can take them private, you can take them public again. You can play. And if you need resources like Musk needs for his fun little ventures, you can say, just go down and take it from Venezuela or whatever. I need it for my spaceships, for my cool little electric cars that China builds better, that Ford Motor Company builds now. And you can keep the scam going, keep getting investors into it, and then there's one financial crisis after another, but it doesn't matter because you always bail out the system. That's the prime directive. And once you're in that game, I mentioned Samantha Power because I read that book, Problem from Hell, which was about genocide in the age of, America, hegemony or hegemon or whatever, not necessarily hegemon because these genocides started way back. arguably, turn of the century, First World War leading up to and after. But anyhow, so she writes a great book, a prize-winning book about it. Then the first thing she does when she goes on TV to talk about Gaza is, well, what do you expect when women were raped and babies got their heads cut off? And she just reads from the script because she's a player, man. She's risen above a simple clerk, a journalist, someone who serves in government, somebody who serves in global organizations. She's broken through. There's no way she's going to talk like some of the characters in her book, the historical figures in her book talked when Armenian genocides and genocides in Bosnia and in Africa were happening. Even, World War II. I mean, a lot of people just didn't want to believe it. And you're equating innocent Palestinian people in Gaza with Nazis. How insane is that? There's no comparison between the SS and children at a hospital or people in Jesus, it's so mad. But there you have it. If you're a player, if you've gotten admitted to the exclusive club on some level, you're going to follow the script. Because everything in this system supports you and yours. And if it means a whole bunch of innocent people have to get killed, get squashed and destroyed, well, that's just the price. Janet Yellen, Hillary Clinton, all of these people, you catch them unashamedly saying that that's the price. That's how you get to have your smartphones and your flat screen TVs and your relatively privileged lives in the first world. People call first world, right, nations, and then there's First Nations, which are indigenous people. It's so weird. It's really the height of absurdity, all of it. And that's all I want to say. Maybe I said too much already. I definitely will not have a membership to the club. Bully MT, out.